The Kaaba is probably the most famous cube in the world, but did you know that the Kaaba actually used to be a rectangle? You see, when Ibrahim originally designed the Kaaba, he built it out of wood and stones and without a roof. And over hundreds of years, the building was damaged and decayed. And during the time of the Quraysh, about 5 years before the Prophet, peace be upon him, became a prophet, there was a flood that happened in Mecca that damaged the Kaaba to the point where it needed to be rebuilt. So the Quraysh decided they wanted to import the most expensive wood and stone to rebuild it, but they didn't have enough money for the full building. So they decided to build part of it, which was the shape of a cube or a Kaaba in Arabic, and they planned to finish the rest of the rectangle when they had more money. And to mark the part of the building that was not yet complete, they built a semicircular wall that's called the Hijr. That is the part of the Kaaba that's missing. It's also the reason why when you're doing tawaf, you actually go around the Hijr instead of through it. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, actually wanted to rebuild the Kaaba as a rectangle, but he was afraid that if he did that, it would sow doubt in the hearts of the people who had only recently become Muslim. And so it stayed a cube ever since. Except that's not entirely true. You see, about 50 years after the Prophet, peace be upon him, died, the Kaaba caught fire and had to be rebuilt once again. So the Meccans decided to take advantage of the opportunity and rebuild it as a rectangle. And it stayed like that for about 9 years until civil war happened and the new ruler eventually took over and reconstructed it as a cube, since that was what he had known in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. But in his defense, he did not know that the Kaaba was actually a rectangle originally, and he thought that the Meccans had just done it for no reason at all. And when he later learned about the hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, he felt extremely guilty. But that still leaves one question unanswered. If the leaders after him knew that the Prophet, peace be upon him, had wanted to revert the Kaaba back to a rectangle, just as the original design of Ibrahim, why didn't they do it? Well, another ruler had this question exactly in mind, and so he asked the scholars about reconverting it back to a rectangle. But the scholars advised against it because if the rulers continued to play games with the Kaaba, turning it from a cube to a rectangle to a cube to a rectangle, it would eventually just become a toy for the rulers. And I think it's important to mention that the Kaaba has been built and rebuilt many times, and it's because the bricks of the Kaaba are not what's important. For example, the last major renovation to strengthen its foundation actually happened in 1996, not 26 years ago. Muslims don't worship a pile of bricks. Rather, it's a direction of prayer that Allah has chosen for us. And maybe there's something good about part of the Kaaba still being open. You see, the doors to the Kaaba used to be open to the public and people were free to pray inside. But now, because there are so many people doing Hajj these days, it would be impossible to open the doors of the Kaaba because of the overcrowding. So the doors of the Kaaba are mostly kept shut. But if the door to the Kaaba is shut and you still want to pray inside the Kaaba, then you can actually pray in the Hijr, which is the open space, and that is actually the Kaaba. Just remember, it's just without walls and a roof. And after all, Ibrahim's original design didn't have a roof either. And as always, like and follow for more Muslim facts.